Good morning and welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church online. I am the Reverend Katie Romano Griffin. My pronouns are she, her, and I am grateful to serve as one of your ministers along with my senior colleague, the Reverend Abi Janamanchi. Whoever you are, whomever you love, wherever you are joining us from, whatever your beliefs, gender identity and expression, immigration status, or life circumstance, we welcome you to worship this morning. Joanne Jersey is today's pastoral visitor. She is on YouTube live chat, and there'll be times throughout the service that you can engage with her. If you're joining us for the first time today, please let Roger Santo Domingo and Lori Richardson know in the chat, and welcome, welcome, welcome. Newcomers, know that you're also invited to complete the form that's going to be linked in the chat, and we'll have instructions near the end of the service for a Zoom room for newcomers after worship to connect, and we'll also have coffee hour for Cedar Lane members and friends. So there'll be a special link at the end of service for that as well. I hope that everyone will join us for deeper connection after the service. Also, please keep an eye out in the e-news because we're going to have a new member recognition later this month and an online virtual book signing for those who are interested in signing. So please keep an eye out in the e-news for instructions on how you can become a member. Now, as we prepare to sing together, Love Will Guide Us, I hope you will also greet your neighbor in the chat.
Love will guide us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hot night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within yourself. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard nights. Love will guide us through the hard nights.
Hello.
Hello.
We are the Manzella family. If you have a chalice at home, you are invited to light yours now. Let us know in the chat where you are by writing "The chalice is lit" in your neighborhood, town, or location. Please join us with the chalice lighting words on your screen, written by Heather Daniels. Our prophets died for the freedom of faith. We are here in their spirit. We are here to practice and sustain our living tradition, to light a chalice, claiming for justice the heat of power of fire. In our free faith, we are here, seeking freedom from despair, the freedom to be loved as ourselves, and the freedom to grow beyond imagination. We are here, gathered in the name of all that we find holy. Let us give thanks for the gift of gathering here. Amen.
Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Lewis, and I'm Cedar Lane's Youth Coordinator. Hoping you all are safe and sound and staying strong during these tough times. I'm going to read an excerpt from the official Unitarian Universalist Association site, and stay tuned. And we read, Harriet Kezia Hunt, making a difference. Harriet Kezia Hunt, 1805 to 1875, was barred from medical study at Harvard College because male students objected to her presence. She learned medicine from Elizabeth Mott, who practiced homeopathic medicine in Boston. She applied unsuccessfully to Harvard Medical School, the first woman to try, yet became the first woman in the US to practice medicine professionally. She was a Universalist. Yay! Harriet's younger sister, Sarah, was very sick. Harriet was beginning to feel desperate because nothing the doctors did was helping. In fact, the treatment seemed to make Sarah worse instead of better. You see, this was more than 100 years ago, before any of your great-grandparents were even born. No one knew about germs the way we do today, or why people got sick. Most doctors believed you had to force sickness out of a person. They would give sick people medicines made of turpentine and mercury. When the medicines made people vomit or drool, the doctors thought the medicines were working and making the sickness come out. Actually, these were signs the medicines were poison. Sometimes doctors would cut a patient on purpose. They thought if blood came out of a sick person, it would bring the sickness out with it. Doctors thought this helped patients, but actually it made their bodies weaker and less able to fight their illness. For one, Harriet's sister Sarah had suffered through these sorts of treatments. It was time to try something new. Sarah went to see a new kind of doctor, Dr. Mott. She didn't care that everybody thought he was a quack, a fake doctor. He treated Sarah in an entirely new way. He explained that she should get plenty of rest, eat healthy food, and exercise every day. Finally, Sarah began to improve, and after some time, was cured. Harriet was very relieved that her sister was better, but she saw other people suffering from the same sorts of treatments that Sarah had experienced. She knew someone had to do something to change things. She decided to take action and become a doctor. She tried to go to medical school, but the students were all men. They protested that they would not study with a woman. So instead, Harriet studied medicine with Dr. Mott's wife, Elizabeth. Her sister Sarah learned with the Motts too. Soon, Harriet was treating patients. She taught women how to stay healthy by the same ways that helped Sarah get better: proper exercise, eating healthy food, and getting enough sleep. Harriet became the first woman to practice medicine in the United States. And there you are. All right, you have a good one, everyone.
We gather each week to make space in our service to bear witness to our joys and our sorrows on life's journey. If you'd like a joy or a sorrow lifted up during the service, please do let our pastoral care team know at pastoralcare@cedarlane.org. And if you normally light a candle of intention in the sanctuary, I invite you to light one at home and or share it in the live chat during this ritual. You can even post them on Facebook. In this sanctuary of caring that cuts across walls and connects us across space, we hold in our hearts those whose primary spiritual practice is parenting, those who are mourning a loss, those who live with grief or chronic pain, illnesses seen or unseen, those with mental illness or addictions, and those who have suffered abuse or injustice. I invite you to breathe with me into this space, maybe even remembering a time when you felt unconditional love. Maybe it was from a pet or a coach or a grandparent or someone else, but please hold that love in your heart. Allow it to bathe you and to bathe all those whom we hold in our hearts today. And if your heart needs some extra nourishment, I invite you to join us streaming live at 5 o'clock tonight for a global streaming service with posse musicians from around the globe, incredible speakers that will nourish your soul and grow this seed of love that you've already felt in your heart. So let us breathe together, expanding that seed of love as we celebrate with the Wilson family. Jared's sister has recovered from COVID-19, and bless her, she is returning to work to continue helping others. Let us grow that seed of love as we celebrate with Wangari Kamau, who has her green card in hand. Congratulations, Wangari. Let us breathe together as we hold in our hearts the Dull family. Eric Dull's father is recovering from a fall and is seeking to regain his new normal. So let us share this love with the Dull family. Breathe with me as we hold in our hearts Regina Sims' sister, Linda. Linda is a healthcare worker currently recovering from COVID-19. Breathe with me again as we send healing love to the Cruz Santo Domingo family that continues to mourn the loss of Roger's uncle. Let us add to this chain of love John Woodward and the Woodward family as they mourn the loss of Taylor, John's father, who passed last week very quickly after a brief battle with lymphoma. Breathe with me again as we hold in our hearts Millie Mader, who was our last living founding member. She passed away this week. Please send all of your love to the whole Mader family. Breathe with me again as we hold in our hearts Charlene Belson-Zelmer and Bill Zelmer as they mourn the loss of Charlene's mother, Esther, who also passed away this week. Breathe with me again as we hold in our hearts beloved member John Giovanelli, who is very ill. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to those whose lives are lost or impacted by COVID-19 across the globe. Holding them all, holding us all in our joys, in our sorrows. Let us take a few moments to be together in silence. And during the silence, if you are mourning the loss or marking the anniversary of a loss, please do type it in the chat or rise in body or spirit wherever you are as we hold these all in mourning and in memory. May your prayers be answered. May your hearts be lifted. May it be so.
ourselves and in the world. The offering is an invitation to demonstrate willingly a commitment to the common principles and convictions expressed in our Unitarian Universalist principles. Our offering reminds us that our congregation belongs to us, to each of us, as well to the whole of us. It is an extension of our gratitude for our spiritual home, where we are welcome to be who we are as we are, and to bless each other and the world with our gifts. One of the ways we express our Universalist love is through our Share the Plate program. We are able to give our resources to community organizations in need in doing the work of love in our community. This week, our offering will go to support No Child Goes Hungry, led by a fellow UU minister, Karen Rasmussen. It's hard to believe that any child ever goes hungry, but in these unprecedented times, No Child Goes Hungry is committed to filling the gaps for food insecure families, both locally and across the nation, during the COVID-19 pandemic. No Child Goes Hungry has been quickly partnering with others to launch innovative programs that ensure that families are getting enough nutritious food to feed so many kids in need. No Child Goes Hungry is a registered 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the elimination of childhood hunger, one kid, one meal at a time. With funds donated by churches, private organizations, and individuals, No Child Goes Hungry works with faith communities and other organizations to eliminate hunger. 100% of your donations will go directly to feeding kids in need. As Linnea Holtman plays a special song for us, the online offering will now be joyfully given and gratefully received. Please give as generously as you are able. You can give by electronic means of the modern era like text, online giving, PayPal, QR code, or by the beloved spiritual practice of mailing a check to the church. Please give as generously as you are able. Thank you for your generosity and support. In the words of Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, we want more soul, a higher cultivation of all spiritual faculties. We need more unselfishness, earnestness, and integrity. We need men and women whose hearts are the home of high and lofty enthusiasm and a noble devotion to the cause of emancipation, who are ready and willing to lay time, talent, and money on the altar of universal freedom. We are grateful for all that you bring and share to make love real at Cedar Lane, in our community, and in our world. Thank you for your noble devotion to the cause of making love real. And now a reading, as read by the Del Sol family, the 1917 Universalist Declaration of Social Principles.
In 1917, the Universalists published a Declaration of Social Principles, written by one of our foremost theologians and one of our nation's biggest proponents of the social gospel, Clarence Skinner. Note that we are keeping the original wording and apologize for the repeated gendered language. A Declaration of Social Principles.
In the present general confusion of thought, we deem it wise to restate the essential principles of the Universalist faith and their social implications in relation to modern life. We proclaim the doctrine of the essential divinity of man, of God's universal fatherhood, and of man's universal brotherhood. Upon this, we build our claims to the divine and inherent right of democracy, which does not mean the pulling down of the few to the level of the many, but implies the giving to the many the culture, the responsibilities which beget self-restraint and rulership, and the arts and refinement of life, which are now the possession of the few. While in no wise minimizing the responsibility of the individual for his own life, we denounce as superstition the teaching that men are led into sin by inherent depravity as by devils of an unseen world. But we hold it to be self-evident that mankind is led into sin by evil surroundings, by the evils of unjust social and economic conditions, which condemn one to be born into the squalor and filth of the slums, and another amidst equally demoralizing influences of unearned luxury. We hold, therefore, that all systems that attempt to load the blame on Adam, upon Satan, or upon human depravity, tend to weaken human self-respect and to lead men away from the discovery and cure of the real causes of human sin and misery. In view of these conclusions, which we believe were plainly taught by the great founder of Christianity, we insist that we should not judge one another any more, but rather that we should remove the stumbling block and the barriers to the kingdom of heaven out of our brother's way.
Conclude also that democracy is not only an inherent right, but also a divinely imposed duty. We find that none of us liveth or dieth to himself, and that true men and women should consider nothing foreign to them which is common to humanity. Specifically, therefore, we urge that a full and free democracy be set up in our country, and that every man and woman be allowed to exercise the divine right and duty of personal responsibility in the acts of government. First, by the full extension of the franchise to women, and second, by granting each citizen a direct vote in the vital affairs of his own government. We brand as infamous the practice of subordinating human interests to, quote, business interests, unquote, and we urge the national government not to hesitate to assume immediate control of the management of the production and distribution of the necessaries of life to prevent want and starvation and the economic enslavement of the people to predatory interests in time of crisis. We assert that the claims of the religion of Jesus, the religion of democracy, and of international brotherhood transcend all the claims of race and of nationality, and that the highest form of patriotism demands we endeavor to place our nation in the position of one that seeks its permanent glory in subordinating self-interests to those of the coming federation of the world, in which, quote, the common sense of most shall hold a fretful realm in awe, unquote. We confidently affirm our faith in God with us in us, the assurance of the ultimate triumph of good, as our great teacher has taught us to respect and reverence him in the very lowliest of humanity, and as one of his disciples wrote that love of God is shown in love of man, so we urge a higher, better morality than that based upon escaping hell and winning a heaven. We assert the old maxim, whatsoever ye do, whether ye eat or drink, do all to the glory of God, the welfare of his children. We believe it to be the duty and the privilege of each one to be a co-worker with God towards that, quote, long desire of the nations, end quote. It is our duty and our privilege to keep ourselves at our best in body, mind, and spirit for the sake of the service which is ours to give. In this faith and in this service, we invite the cooperation of all.
Program. The Universalist Church recognizes the fact that no individual and no nation can live a completely effective Christian life in an unchristian social order. We therefore declare the primal task of the Church of today to be the reconstruction of the world's civilization in terms of justice, peace, and righteousness, so that the spiritual life of all may develop to its fullest capacity. To this end, we submit the following working program. For all the agencies of the Church, we shall endeavor to educate and inspire the community and the nation to a keener social consciousness and a truer vision of the kingdom of God on the earth. We want to safeguard marriage so that every child shall be born with a sound physical, mental, and moral heritage. We want to guarantee to every child these conditions of housing, education, food, and recreation, which will enable him to become his best, to standard and plane of living for all, should be such that deterioration becomes impossible and advancement becomes limited only by capacity. Democracy, in order to be complete, but must be economic and social as well as political. We therefore declare for the democratization of industry and of land and for establishment of cooperation. We would condemn those forms of private monopoly which make it difficult or impossible for men to attain their common share and common heritage of the earth, and especially do we condemn those forms of exploitation which in times of national stress and suffering make the few wealthy and the cost of the many. No democracy can be real which shuts out half the people. Women should therefore have equal economic, social, and political rights with men. Free discussion in the soul of democracy and the guarantee of our liberties. It should therefore be maintained in our churches, colleges, and public platforms, and limited only by mutual self-respect and courtesy. We recognize the use of neurotic, habit-forming drugs and imminent peril to social welfare, and we are particularly alarmed at the extent to which tobacco in the forms of cigarettes is undermining the health and character of American youth. We therefore recommend action towards securing national prohibition of the manufacture and sale of alcohol, liquors, and such progress in restriction of the manufacture of cigarettes and the sale of tobacco as public welfare shall require and public sentiment support. We particularly commend the tobacco laws of Kansas and as a model for all the states. While cooperating to the fullest extent possible with the various forms of charity, relief, and correction, we recognize they do not eradicate fundamental causes. We would mobilize the force of our church against the cause which create mystery, disease, accidents, ignorance, and crime, and summon all our strength to the establishment of justice, education, and social righteousness. Some forms of social insurance should gradually replace the present industrialist and inadequate methods of charitable relief. War is brutal, wasteful, and ineffective. We therefore pledge ourselves to work for the organization of federalization of the world and that peace may be secured at the earliest possible date, consistent with justice for all.
The Universalist Church offers a complete program for completing humanity. First, an economic order which shall give to every human being an equal share in the common gifts of God, and in addition all that he shall earn by his own labor. Second, a social order in which there shall be equal rights for all, special privileges for none. The help of the strong for the weak until the weak become strong. Third, a moral order in which all human law and action shall be the expression of the moral order of the universe. Fourth, a spiritual order which shall build out of the growing lives of living men on the growing temple of the living God, as adopted by the Universalist General Conference as part of the report of the Social Service Commission of 1917.
Think of your fellow and give him a helping hand. Put a little love in your heart.
You see it's getting late. Oh, please don't hesitate. Put a little love in your heart. And the world will be a better place. You know the world will be a better place
For you
and me.
you just wait and see.
Another day goes by and still the children cry. Put a little love in your heart. If you want the world to know, we won't let hatred grow. Put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place. You know the world will be a better place
For you
and me. You just wait and see. Put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart. Put a little love in your heart. A little love in your heart. A little love in your heart. Take a good look around, and if you're looking down, put a little love in your heart. I hope when you decide kindness will be your guide, put a little love in your heart, and the world will be a better place. You know the world will be a better place
For you
and me. You just wait and see. Put a little love in your heart. Put a
So I want to start off my sermon with a little confession for you. So I'm not sure about you, but when I've seen pictures of the folks protesting the stay-at-home orders, I found myself, well, sometimes hoping to kind of come down with the virus while at the protest just so they would learn. And then about a minute after feeling that frustration, I start to honestly feel a little bit of shame because I'm a Unitarian Universalist. That second part of our name, Universalism, is really the first part that called out to me when I was a new UU. Universalism teaches us that we should endeavor to love everyone. But how do you love someone who doesn't seem to care if we're healthy or not? I tell myself I'm a believer in the power of universalism. Back in the day, I even came up with a tagline that became an early UU viral graphic meme, love without exceptions. There's even a poster of that on the wall in my office. So how do I love without exceptions in a time of COVID? Now, I know some of you have had this same struggle. I bet quite a number of you watching this have had these same kind of thoughts. It feels like these protesters are politicians and they're easing social distancing restrictions and reopening their states are in a way disrespecting the sacrifice so many of us are making to ensure the safety of ourselves, our neighbors, our communities. So how do we remain a universalist and even love them too? So to start answering this question, I decided to do a little dive into our faith's history, especially our Universalist history, around the closest analogy we have to the current pandemic, the Spanish influenza pandemic in 1918 to around 1920. As I started searching, our reading earlier from the Dulso family popped up first and foremost. So I had heard of this 1917 declaration before. I know it was written by Clarence Skinner, one of our nation's foremost proponents of the social gospel. And even I remember hearing about the social gospel in various American history classes when I was down in public school in Georgia. Skinner, whom today one of our denomination's publishing houses is named after, was the author of the 1917 Declaration of Social Principles that the Universalists passed at their annual assembly, 1 year before the influenza outbreak hit America. It was written during a time of great social upheaval, with the Great War underway in Europe. Reading this declaration in today's era, I can't help but think the Universalists of 1917 were way ahead of their time. Just listen to some of what they were saying literally over 100 years ago. We want to guarantee to every child these conditions of housing, education, food, and recreation, which will enable them to become their best. The standard and plane of living for all should be such that deterioration becomes impossible and advancement becomes limited only by capacity. And while cooperating to the fullest extent possible with the various forms of charity, relief, and correction, we recognize they do not eradicate fundamental causes. We would mobilize the forces of our church against the causes which create misery, disease, accidents, ignorance, and crime, and summon all our strength to the establishment of justice, education, and social righteousness. I mean, that last paragraph sounds like something we would pass this year at our General Assembly, but it was passed over 100 years ago. I can't help but think the Universalist churches in 1918 were inspired by this 1917 declaration when the influenza pandemic hit. Because all the news reports I could find have Universalist churches taking action right alongside these principles. They certainly mobilized against the disease, just as the 1917 declaration called for. Universalist churches closed nationwide, even if other churches in their area weren't closed. The Saturday, October 5th, 1918, Boston Globe reported that their Mayor Peters made a call to close churches because of the medical emergency. Not every church did, but the 2 Universalist churches in Boston were listed as being shut down right alongside the article. The Universalist church in Lowell, Massachusetts closed as well. The Grace Universalist Church even took out an ad in the Lowell Courier-Citizen on October 19th, 1918 that said, and I quote, "With a desire to do everything possible to eradicate the epidemic from the city, Grace Universalist Church will remain closed another Sunday." But you know what they did have at Grace Universalist Church? An emergency food kitchen for families. The October 14th, 1918 Lowell Sun reported, "The emergency food kitchen at Grace Universalist Church is doing a rushing business in serving stews to families that are unable, because of the influenza, to do their own cooking." In Middlesex Village alone, 30 quarts were served on Saturday and 18 on Sunday. And today, the orders have been coming in so thick and fast that the staff of, I'm embarrassed to say this out loud, that the staff of lady helpers has not been able to count them. Just like Grace Universalist Church, lots of individual Universalist churches took different actions to help in their local communities. Universalist churches became infirmaries in different parts of the country, like the Universalist Church in Provincetown, Massachusetts. The Universalist in Worcester, Massachusetts, operated an epidemic orphans home with a couple of nearby churches. In 1918, over 50 children who were orphaned by the Spanish flu epidemic found a temporary home there until they were able to find permanent homes. During the Spanish flu epidemic, the Universalist Church in Iowa City served as an annex to the University of Iowa Hospital, providing 3,500 meals to healthcare providers over a 3-week period. The Women's Alliance also made gauze face masks for children to help slow the spread of infection. It sounds like a lot of Universalist churches shut down, even if they hadn't been ordered to, and focused on what we now call social distancing to keep the pandemic contained, and focused on helping their local communities however they could. Now that sounds pretty familiar right now, doesn't it? I have to imagine that the Universalists facing the Spanish flu pandemic also found inspiration from their history. Indeed, Universalists have a long history of being deeply engaged with public health. Part of our legacy as Universalists is the American Red Cross, founded by Universalist Clara Barton. Clara Barton, by the way, was the child of an important lay leader of the Universalist Church in Oxford, Massachusetts. So parents, when you volunteer for the church, your child might just grow up to be another Clara Barton. Today, the American Red Cross is arguably our nation's foremost public health nonprofit organization, and it would not have survived without the tireless efforts that Clara Barton made to keep it alive. Between 1880 and 1900, Barton's Red Cross showed up to assist in the Johnstown flood, the Sea Island and Galveston hurricanes, and the outbreaks of typhoid in Butte, Pennsylvania, and yellow fever in Jacksonville, Florida. In these crises, the Red Cross, led directly by Clara Barton, provided nurses, basic supplies, and aid centers to help victims. We all probably know or have guessed that Clara Barton has a tie to our local area with the Clara Barton Parkway. In 1900, she moved the headquarters of the Red Cross from Washington to Glen Echo and built the new headquarters at her private home. And she later passed away in Glen Echo in 1912. So I find strength in these stories from our denominational history. There's something comforting in knowing that our ancestors struggled with these same decisions, and using their theology of universal love, focused on care for the community over their individual church life. Because right now, I know I need that comfort. You know, even in our modern era, we have stories about Universalists making real impacts on public health. Forrest Church was the minister of All Souls Church in Manhattan, and he identified strongly as a Universalist. And New York City was deeply impacted by the beginning of another modern-day pandemic, AIDS. In 1985, he led All Souls Church in learning about AIDS, 1985, and providing direct services to AIDS sufferers. He even organized All Souls to have 10,000 ads on public city buses that read, "AIDS is a human disease and deserves a humane response." A New Yorker article from November 4th, 1985 about the church began with their work on AIDS. Forrest Church preached that the greatest danger to society was not the AIDS epidemic itself, but the, quote, epidemic of fear and bigotry. The congregation organized a forum to study ways it could help those afflicted with the disease, set up a task force to work on its findings, and volunteered to underwrite a newsletter for sufferers and those who help care for them. Members are now training to be AIDS counselors, and the congregation is holding fundraising benefits, inviting AIDS sufferers to attend concerts and other events at the church. The mobilization of all souls was among the first religious responses to the disease. Forrest Church is probably the most widely known Universalist theologian of the past 30 years. Here's a short quote from a book I cannot recommend enough that Forrest Church published in 2009, Cathedral of the World. Universalism is an exacting gospel. Taken seriously, no theology is more challenging, morally, spiritually, or intellectually. To love your enemy as yourself, to see your tears in another's eyes, to respect and even embrace otherness, rather than to merely tolerate or even worse, dismiss it. None of this comes naturally to us. We are weaned on the rational presumption that if two people disagree, only one can be right. This works better in mathematics than it does in theology, and Universalism reminds us of that. Yet even to approximate the Universalist ideal remains devilishly difficult in the actual practice. Given the natural human tendency towards division, Universalists run the constant temptation to backslide in their faith. One can lapse and become a bad or lazy Universalist as effortlessly as others become ice cream social Presbyterians or nominal Catholics. So you can count me in the number of lazy Universalists trying to get a little more active. In an effort to get a little more active, this past week I attended the online Think Orange conference. Think Orange is a method of religious education that's used in evangelical, non-denominational megachurches. Now, I always end up learning a lot while at the conference, and I always end up giving my evangelical to Unitarian Universalist translator a solid workout. The Think Orange folks don't quite realize it all the time, but there are times that they most definitely flirt with classic Christian Universalism. So on Thursday, just a couple of days ago, I heard a presentation by a businessman named Joel Manby. He's run a number of companies and wrote a book about the values he instills in his workforce. And he freely admits it's a modern day retelling of the famous Corinthians chapter, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 4 through 8. Even if you've never cracked open the Bible before, you might have heard this saying before, likely at a wedding. Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no records of wrongs. So Joel Manby edited it, and just slightly, and he came up with 7 principles. We like 7 principles. And in a pretty funny twist, he calls his program Love Works, and published a book about it in 2012. I took it as a sign that maybe his principles could help me figure out how to be a Universalist during a time of COVID. His 7 principles of love works are to be patient, kind, trusting, unselfish, truthful, forgiving, and dedicated. That sounds a lot like what our Universalist forebears have been saying in 1917 and shown through their actions. Universalism is patient. We believe in the power of slowing down and making sure that progress moves us all towards collective liberation and salvation. Universalism is kind. We believe in the power of kindness, being there for our neighbors and communities, helping where our help could best be used and when it's invited in. Universalism is trusting. We believe in the power of trusting each other and trusting each other to do what's right for the benefit of all. Universalism is unselfish. We believe in the power of setting our egos aside and doing the work that needs to be done. Universalism is truthful. We believe in the power of the truth while acknowledging there are multiple truths in any given situation. Universalism is forgiving. We believe in the power of second chances and believe that in the end, we're all saved. Universalism is dedicated. We believe in dedicating ourselves and our churches to making the world a better place and working towards a just society for all. There are some things on that list I think I'm doing an okay job with, and there are some things I know I can get better at. And I bet the same is true for you too. So what are some things we can do to proclaim our universalism during the time of COVID? How can we live a universalist life during the coronavirus? Well, for starters, we can remember to be patient, kind, trusting, unselfish, truthful, forgiving, and dedicated. And we can find inspiration from our denomination's storied past, where churches shut down in the face of a pandemic and put their efforts into the public health of and care for their communities. Universalism has been through this before, and we will go through it again. Our church has faced down wars, pandemics, and more, and held true to the gospel of universal love and helping the least among us. And we will continue to do so in the future. In the end, church is far more than the building where we congregate. We are the church. We are the congregation. We can do this. We are the people who care. We are willing to sacrifice our comfort for the needs of our community and for public health. And we have the faith that our efforts have already made a difference in the public health of our communities, and we will continue to do so for as long as we are needed. Because we are the people willing to put the communal needs over our individual desires. We are Unitarian Universalists. We just need to keep faith. And specifically, we just need to keep our Universalist faith. Amen and blessed be. And now please join us in singing my personal favorite hymn, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Before the closing words, I'd like to thank the team that helped make today's service possible. Thank you to Manzella family, the Del Sol family, Reverend Katie and Tiffany Lewis. Thank you to members of our AV team, Barbara Thompson, Don Woodruff, Mike Morse, Todd Chernikoff, Michael McCrickard, Sandy Dossie, and Rebecca Knocktrop for making those beautiful in-gathering slides. Thank you to our membership team, ushers, greeters, and pastoral visitors who have been active in the live chat. Thank you to our visual arts team members and to musicians Dr. Jasmine Lee, Jenny Lynn Moyer, Rachel Moore, Kevin Miller, and Dr. Henry Sakrishi and Linnea Holtman. We'd love for you to stay in touch. If you are new to Cedar Lane or to Unitarian Universalism, please join us in the Welcome Zoom room. The Zoom link will be in the YouTube chat and on your screen after the closing words. If you're a Cedar Lane member or friend, please join us at Virtual Coffee Hour. Once we're all in the room, the host will assign you to a random breakout group so we can have small group social conversations. The URL for Coffee Hour will be in the YouTube chat and on your screen after the closing words. And now for our closing words by Reverend Forrest Church in his work, The Cathedral of the World. So it's pretty simple for me. Love when you can. Do the work that is yours to do. Be the person that is yours to be at any given time. Think to wish for what is yours at this very moment. To love, to serve, to touch, to know. Think to wish for all that is yours to have. Think to wish for all that is yours to do. And think to wish that you might be who it is that you might most fully be. Avoid wishful thinking. Avoid the traps and pitfalls of nostalgia. Savor every moment as it passes. And enlist yourself in saving that which can be saved this very moment, in order that it too may endure for others to enjoy. Amen and blessed be.
Yeah.